Hey, welcome back everybody, it's Red Kojak, and today we're going to be going over something that is like a nice little series I like to do, particularly for upcoming games, where I try to predict how much will it sell, both in terms of unit sales and in terms of opening weekend. And it's kind of a good guesstimate based on statistical data from previous franchise or previous games in the franchise. And for this series we're going to be doing Assassin's Creed Origin, because that comes out, well, not Origin, Odyssey. They both start with O, but Origin is actually relevant to this too. But for Assassin's Creed Origin, it comes out next week, Friday, October 5th, and I kind of wanted to go over a couple different things in terms of where I think this series will fall in terms of opening weekend and in terms of unit sales overall. Now, before we get started, let's take a trip down memory lane and kind of go over the top selling of Assassin's Creed per units in terms of number of copies sold. And obviously the older copies, because they're less costly than the more the current versions, which are like $59.99, whereas previous games was like $49.99, $39.99. So it's understandable that older copies might end up selling more, but not necessarily make as much total gross revenue, because it's selling units at a lower price, whereas this might be selling units at, this is selling units at a higher price. So that has to be factored in terms of that overall aspect. Looking at this chart I'm going to add right now, you'll see that overall the most units sold in terms of the Assassin's Creed franchise, at least from the data I'm able to pull so far, is Assassin's Creed 3 with 3.52 million, and then Assassin's Creed 2 3.27, Black Flag with 2.36, Revelations with 2.22, and then you'll see that I add in there my good, bad, and baseline approach for where I think Odyssey will be in terms of units. And I use this in kind of a financial framework to kind of map out where I think things will end up. But in essence, if Odyssey does good and does sell roughly 15% more copy than Origin, it will probably be at about 1.66 units sold. More, maybe less, depending. That's just kind of where I'm expecting. And the reason why I'm saying that it might sell 15% higher in my good scenario is because they have done a really good job with the RPG element. And Assassin's Creed is an action-adventure game, but the fact that they've completely did the switch from not just an action-adventure game, but to having a full RPG element where your choices matter, that might bring in new blood that, really propels it, to sell more than Origin. However, even though that's in my good scenario in terms of units sold, I don't think that's going to be the case. And then you can see below that my Odyssey good choice, you have Unity, which sold 1.59, rough estimates. Then my Odyssey baseline approach, which if everything goes as planned and they sell a little bit more, I don't think it'll be a lot more in my baseline approach. So I put it like maybe at 2% more in terms of total unit sales at 1.54. And then, of course, we have Origins, which, that's been confirmed to have sold 1.52, more than twice as much as Syndicate. And Syndicate was the game that came out before Assassin's Creed Origin, but there was a 2-year gap. So I do believe that 2-year gap has some, credence as to why Origins sold as well as it did. Sometimes, franchise fatigue is a thing. So taking a year or two off and then releasing your game, that could definitely provide a really big bump. And then on top of that, Origins was just a breath of fresh air. So even though it didn't exactly win over every single, diehard, loyal Assassin's Creed fans from old, it definitely brought in new blood. And that's something that you always have to factor, is that you always want to reinvent your franchise to always bring in new people, but at the same time try to hold on to your base as much as possible. I think Assassin's Creed Syndicate had gotten to the point where it alienated everybody, even though I actually personally like Assassin's Creed Syndicate. I thought it was really cool. But based on feedback and sales, people disagreed. So, and then after Origins 1.5 units sold, we have my bad prediction, which is a possibility that Odyssey might have not really done it, and because it is a pretty competitive market, and it might actually sell less than Origin. So I'm guessing that 15% less, it'll probably sell about 1.36 unit, which that is fine. It might start out that way, but it might end up propelling it, because Ubisoft is really good at coming back and actually making the games really good. And they say that they're planning to take a break from Assassin's Creed next year, so maybe them taking a year from Assassin's Creed next year might allow them to re-release Origins and Odyssey with new features or new DLCs, and then resell it again, which could help propel sales number even higher. So again, that's something to factor in. And then after that, you have Assassin's Creed, first one, 1.24 mil, Brotherhood at 9.99 mil, and then Syndicate at 0.92 mil, so 900 some thousand copies. So that's something to factor in. overall, that kind of gives you an idea of where things stack up. And my personal prediction is that it's gonna probably be around baseline, only because this season is really competitive, with Red Dead Redemption coming out, which is a narrative game along with a multiplayer game. It's like the best of both worlds. So I do think that is going to affect people who might have thought about buying Assassin's Creed Odyssey, but instead saying, hey, it's Red Dead Redemption, and they do open world better than Ubisoft. So instead of spending money on Assassin's Creed, I'd rather spend it on Red Dead. And Red Dead is really pushing their whole narrative thing. So that's something to factor in. So, from a narrative perspective, Odyssey and Red Dead are competitors. Then again, Red Dead is competitors of everything. It's a competitor of single players, competitor of multiplayer. It's like everything. I mean, they're like one of the few games that can really compete on everything. Whereas, Blackout is only multiplayer. It doesn't have any single player. So people who wouldn't have bought it anyway because they didn't like multiplayer, then they're not affected by that. Now we're harking it over to weekend opening, and this is it could be a little bit different, because I do think that Assassin's Creed Odyssey has a lot better bundle than Origins, so it might end up making more revenue, but maybe sell less unit overall, because they have some really good bundles for Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and they've been really pushing the commercials. Like, I've seen commercials about Alexios and the Alexa commercial and stuff like that, so they're really pushing this. Not to mention, a lot of people like Greece mythology more than Egypt mythology, so that is like from Spartacus to like Rome, things like that. Those are all Greek mythology that people have gotten used to. So that I do think that the ambiance of Greece is a little bit stronger selling point than the ambiance of Egypt. So it might end up motivating or galvanizing fans to actually buy the higher tier edition, like the deluxe or the ultimate edition of the game, versus buying the regular copy. So things like that, little marketing strategies like that could help Odyssey make more revenue but sell less unit because of their bundling and their marketing strategy. So that's something to factor in. So I do think that it might make more revenue in its opening weekend. Not a lot though. I mean unless I'm completely wrong, which that's why we always have 3 scenarios to look at. So with Odyssey, for the good choices, I'm estimating that it will probably be anywhere from maybe an opening weekend of like 103, for good, which will put it, 103 million. That is, if it has an opening weekend of 103 million, maybe more, that could put it above Unity in terms of what Unity did. But then the baseline Odyssey, which I put roughly about 2%, maybe 3% higher, and then Origins, if everything goes as planned, that would be about 92 million opening weekend, give or take. If that happens, then they've done a really good job at least holding on to the new fans that they brought in, but at the same time not alienating too many fans. And then of course, if they completely miss the ball and have a bad scenario, then they could probably end up only seeing 70 million opening weekend, which would be a really bad start, because keep in mind that Syndicate only had an opening weekend of roughly about 55 million. So if they go from Origins 90 million opening down to like a 70 million, that's a pretty steep drop revenue wise, and it also means that they might need to reassess this whole identity of Assassin's Creed, which is something that a lot of people have been complaining about. But overall, I kind of my final prediction is that I'm gonna give it a baseline approach in terms of revenue of about maybe like 92 overall. I do think that a lot of the higher tier, like the Ultimate and the Deluxe Edition, I do think the Ultimate and Deluxe Edition will help kind of propel it revenue-wise a little bit higher. And then not to mention the fact that there isn't an Assassin's Creed coming next year, that would probably motivate people to even buy this one as opposed to just waiting, especially since it has over 100 hours of content, give or take. So, their goal is to have people play this game for 6 months, give or take, maybe more. So I do think they're really pushing how revolutionary this game is, but at the same time, I don't think it's going to ultimately translate into more units being sold. I think it's going to be fewer units, but at higher price. Because for those who are going to buy Assassin's Creed, if they're going to buy it, and they're going to buy the higher tier version. I mean, I actually bought the higher tier version on my Xbox, so I'm be playing that too. I might not stream, but I like Assassin's Creed, and particularly, I love Greece. Like, I'm a big Spartacus fan, I'm a big Rome fan, so when they said that they were going, back to Greece, I originally was going to skip Assassin's Creed altogether, but I saw the settings, I saw that it was Greece, and I really like, Greece, especially 300, all the other stuff. So that's something that I'm a really big fan of, is Greek mythology. So that is the main reason why I wanted to buy Assassin's Creed, because I like that mythology. I was not interested in buying Origins. Period. even though it was a good game, I heard all the really good stuff about it. I just wasn't interested in it because that Egypt setting wasn't really something that I really want to do, unless you go an X-Men with, Apocalypse or something, then maybe I'll consider that. But no, that's a completely different story. But overall, let me know what you guys think. Do you think it's going to sell better, worse than Origins? Where do you think it's going to fall on the Richter scale, and why? Why do you think it's going to, be better or worse than Origins? Either way, my prediction is that less units but higher overall revenue just through their marketing and just selling higher edition. But still, I think ultimately it might overall sell more lifetime copies later on, like when they do the anniversary release. So I think towards the next year is when it might, in terms of units sold, might actually surpass Origins. But I don't think it's gonna do so in the first 6 or so months, but I could be wrong, So either way, let me know what you guys think about this. As always, this is Red Kojak, your friendly neighborhood analyst, and I will catch you guys in my next episode. Bye.